After a week in Indianapolis covering the NFL Combine, having a slight robbery happen, we are actually burglarization. I learned there's a difference between the two. We are back here at the Chat Sports Studios, recapping some of the things I learned from Indy and some of the news and rumors coming out from the Combine regarding your Atlanta Falcons. So let's jump right into it. From ESPN's desk, Dan Graziano put this out, and I want to break it down into little snippets and then dissect it and discuss it as we move along in the video. But we'll open up here. Two NFC South teams that I expect to be fairly aggressive in pursuing defensive upgrades in the draft and free agency are the Falcons and Panthers. The Falcons are likely to use most, if not all, of their early round picks on defensive players. Let's pause right there, and we'll pick up where he leaves off later on regarding trading the 15th overall pick, but talk about being aggressive in free agency and the draft. I fully expect a double dip at the edge rusher spot. If the Falcons go out in free agency and make one of the more notable edge rusher signings, my reaction to that will not be, well, looks like they're not going to go edge at pick number 15 anymore, if they even pick 15th. Nope, I expect them to double dip at this spot. There are some noteworthy free agent edge rushers out there, but to be brutally honest with you, it's not a great time to go into free agency searching for a pass rusher. Now, names will become more available, like Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, Jonathan Allen, some guys who are still under contract that could be traded or cut as we move into free agency. But as of now, these are some of the most notable names set to hit the open market. If we take a closer look, the top four guys I'd say that fit a little bit of the Falcons' timeline and also covering your bases from a youth standpoint and a veteran standpoint. You've got Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, Chase Young, Azeez Ojulari. Those are some guys that I could see Atlanta kicking the tires on. If I had to pick one of those four, I would go with Khalil Mack. He is not your long-term fix by any means. He's 33, 34 years old, but I think he can be used quite effectively on third down packages, obvious passing situations. I mean, you just go back to 2023, the guy had 17 sacks and 5 forced fumbles. You're probably not going to get 17 sacks and 5 forced fumbles, but if you can milk 8 to 9 sacks out of him, along with a rookie picked 15th overall at the same position who can develop and learn from Mack a thing or two, I think that could set you up nicely in the short term and the long term, right? This might be kind of the defensive end example of what the Falcons did with the quarterback position last year. They went after a veteran for the short term, but they also drafted their long-term piece with Michael Penix. Why can't they have the same line of thinking for the defensive end spot? Go get a veteran for the short term, but also draft for the future without having that rookie be under immense pressure to develop and deliver 8-10 sacks right off the jump. Now, before we get any further in today's episode, brand new month here, and I want to beat the numbers we put up last March in subscriber total. So we got 963 subs a year ago. We're at 19 so far, very early in the month of March, though. So go ahead, click that subscribe button for free Falcons free agency and draft content. So that's the free agent side of things. Now let's talk about the second part of the double dip, the draft side of things. I 100% expect Atlanta to go with a pass rusher or a defensive player in general in round number 1. The Falcons only brought their defensive coaches outside of TJ Yates to the Combine. They are using all 45 of their pre-draft visits reportedly on defensive players. So they may not use every single of their 5 picks on defense, but I bet 3 or 4 of them are going to be on defense and probably closer to 5 than 3. Now, when it comes to early in the draft, one name that a lot of people have gravitated towards is Mike Green, the defensive end out of Marshall. His name came up, and not for good reasons, during the Combine. So there was always a little bit of a mystery as to why did he transfer from Virginia to Marshall. But I didn't want to speculate because I'm not a Virginia fan or a Marshall fan, so I didn't really have good answers to this, and I'm not on Marshall online chat rooms and things like that. But during the Combine, he was asked about some sexual assault allegations that were brought against him during his time at Virginia. Now, he denied these claims. He has never been charged with the crime. I am always of the mindset of innocent until proven guilty, and I don't like when we rush to just deem people guilty, especially when they're athletes and they get a little bit more attention and they're in the spotlight. But this, to me, seems like something the Falcons are going to have to do a lot of homework on, because it's not one allegation against them, it's two allegations, and they're separate, right? It's not like two girls from the same party in college. No, one from high school, one from college. He ended up transferring as a result. He played 6 games in 2022 at Virginia. Then he didn't play at all at Virginia in 2023. So what happened? Why did he get completely phased out of the defense after playing a few games in 2022? Like, that's something worth inquiring about. Now, I've seen some chatter, we'll put it online, that these allegations are enough for the Falcons to completely remove Mike Green from their draft board. That seems a little premature to me. One, because we're so early in the process still, right? You got to think about the NFL offseason in the order of events. When the season ends, what's the first thing that we do? We look at the draft, right? We want to know who are they going to pick, because that's the most gravitating thing in the offseason. Reality, front office, their first order of operation is, which of our coaches do we want to bring back? And the Falcons made a decision on moving on from Jimmy Lake, and that was reflected by moving on from him right after the season ended, or a week or so after the season ended. So once they decide what they want to do with their coaching staff, the next thing they decide to do is, okay, we got to look at free agency next. Which of our free agents do we want to bring back? Once they figure out who's on the top of their wish list, then they look externally. What other free agents from other teams should we look to bring in to replace some of the guys we're losing? And while they're doing all that, they're also going to be looking into possible trades. As players become available for trades, they'll have internal discussions. And that brings you all the way up to the combine. And it's not that at the combine, teams then begin looking at prospects for the first time. There are scouts who are purely dedicated to looking at these prospects. But in terms of the higher-up decision-making, Terry Fontenot, Raheem Morris, the decision on who's on the pre-draft, who's on the big board, who's on their draft board, I don't think is finalized before the combine or even during the combine. This is the first time they're really getting to know these players. They don't go to the combine just to learn who's fast, right? They have the scouts to tell them that. They go to the combine to get two things answered. One, medical information. Someone asked Terry Fontenot, hey, how would you rank medical information, interviews, and 40-yard dash? And he said, first and foremost, the most important thing from the combine is the medicals. So they're there to learn who's healthy and who has long-term medical concerns. Then they want to get to know these guys as players. They want to ask them questions. They want to learn more about them than just their stats. They can look at the film. They can look at tape. They can look at the tape to tell them whether or not a player is fast or strong. That's not what the combine's really for GMs, in my opinion. It's more for them to learn who's healthy and what's this person like as a person. So that's my little more like a 3-minute rant on what the pre-draft process looks like and why I do not believe Mike Green has been crossed off the Falcons draft big board. I'm not even convinced they have a finalized big board or anything close to it right now. Now, who do you want to see Atlanta pick at number 15? Next up on the show, we're going to talk about the possibility of this pick getting traded. But if the Dirty Birds stay pat at 15, who do you want Roger Goodell saying when he gets to the podium? Let me know in the comment section below. While you're doing that, 60 seconds here, I'm going to tell everyone watching about our friends over at PrizePicks. You see, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players. Basketball season is heating up, and PrizePicks is the place to get real money action. Here's an example of some selections for the Hawks game coming up. You got the more here on the Goblin, which basically takes their stat projection and lowers it for you. Now, it's not as big of a payout, but it's a lot easier to hit. So if you like these selections and you want to have some extra interest while watching some games over the next few weeks, especially with March Madness around the corner, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All of that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Shout out to PrizePicks for supporting us here at Falcons Today. Download their app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. So let's switch gears a little bit and pick up where Dan Graziano, kind of where we paused Dan, on some of the rumors he's hearing regarding Atlanta. So, continuing his spiel. And they have some interest in trading their number 15 pick to collect more draft capital depending on how the first half of round 1 shakes out. To me, this makes a lot of sense. One, this is a very deep edge rusher class. It's one of the best defensive line classes we've seen in recent history. It's not super top heavy where you have like 3 guys that are going to go in the top 6, but man, the player you're finding at pick 25 this year at the same position, I think is way better than the player you find in the previous 5 years at pick 25 for that edge rusher position. So there's not a huge drop-off or gap between the 3rd edge rusher taken and the 6th edge rusher taken. And if Atlanta feels comfortable with that small gap, they may be looking to add more draft picks. Sure, you're not getting the 1st or 2nd, maybe even the 3rd edge rusher taken, but if you feel like an extra 2nd-round draft pick could make up for getting the 6th edge rusher taken versus the 4th edge rusher taken, you could pull the trigger on a trade. So a team I could see moving up, what about the Green Bay Packers? They have been more aggressive lately than ever before. I think they're starting to learn a little bit what it's like to not have a surefire Hall of Fame quarterback. From Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, they never had this need to be big spenders in free agency. They always built in the draft. Then you go back to last offseason where they made, for their standards, monster contract signings in Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney. Now there's rumblings that they could be interested in trading for a wide receiver. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers decide, hey, let's be aggressive. We've kind of found something in Jordan Love, but we're trying to break through a little bit in the postseason with just one. That's not nothing to be not proud of, but just one playoff win over the last 2 seasons. I could see them forfeiting maybe their 2nd-round draft pick to jump up from 23 to 15 and secure either the defensive end of their choice or a possible wide receiver. Matthew Golden's stock is going up. Christian Watson's going to miss possibly all of 2025. A lot of it coming off a torn ACL. So if they want to be the first team to select a wide receiver, I could see them parting ways with a 2nd-round draft pick. And like I said earlier, if you're Atlanta, you could look at this and go, sure, we're not getting maybe the first pass rusher on our big board, but we're getting the 2nd or 3rd guy, and we're getting an extra 2nd-round pick, which could help make up for not getting the number 1 pass rusher of our dreams. So I'll turn it over to you now. Be the host. Would you trade back? Give me a yes or give me a no in the comment section. This cord I did not expect to get stuck around my neck. So I'd be down for it. Yeah. If that was truly the trade, I'm in. I think you could move back, and I think there's a very good chance that maybe one of the guys you're targeting at 15 could be there at 23. I would go possibly with Mykel Williams, and this is coming from an angle of what I would do as the GM, but that doesn't matter because I'm not the GM. And what I think is way more important that far too often people lose sight of, what I believe Terry is going to do. And I think Fontenot is going to go pass rusher, and I think Mykel Williams could make a lot of sense for a handful of reasons. One, he's got a good blend of extreme athletic traits, which we did not get to see enough of at the Combine. He did not test, unfortunately, but at his pro day, I'm sure he will pop. So from an athletic trait standpoint, like every other UGA defender over the last 3 or 4 years going into the draft, he stands out. And then from a production standpoint, sure, 7.5 sacks last year was probably not as much as we would have liked here, but played 60%, he said, for much of the year with an ankle injury. And I could see Fontenot going, I need to earn some brownie points with the fan base because we've had nothing but losing seasons under my control. And I think people might be a little bit more on board with this draft selection compared to last year if it's a Bulldog. So to me, you put those 3 things together, and right now I'm leaning towards Williams for Atlanta. One other guy who just gave you a sneak peek of to keep an eye on is James Pierce. Speaking of James Pierce, he went to Tennessee. And Reed, I didn't tell you this. I got to Terry Fontenot's podium for his interview on, was it Monday or Tuesday? 30 minutes before he went up there, so I wanted to be front row. And, I had one of those, like, selfie sticks just so I can have a nice stabilizer. First thing he says when he walks to the podium is he sees the back of my phone, And he goes, oh, we got Tennessee in the house. And I was like, yeah, probably not the best thing to have a college phone case at the NFL Combine. Will Campbell from LSU also made a jab at my Tennessee phone case. So learning lesson for sure there. Won't happen again. But let's talk about Pierce for a moment because he's another guy like Williams where the production wasn't oozing. I think people were hoping for more coming off a breakout 2023 season. I'm not going to say he took a step back. I'm going to say he took a step to the side because, for starters, he did not play a lot early in the season because Tennessee was blowing people out. And more often than not, that's where pass rushers in college get a lot of their sacks when they play the School of the Deaf and Blind in September. James Pierce was playing the first quarter, and that was it because at that point they were up by 30 or 40 points, and they pulled back on all their starters. So he did miss out on some opportunities to rack up some garbage sacks, if you will. And, people don't remember those garbage sacks in February, March, April, May when we get into the draft because they just look at the number and think that's the finalized number right there, and that tells you everything you need to know about the player. So that's one reason why I could see Atlanta going, here's a guy that had an extremely fast 40-yard dash time, 4.47. I mean, that's faster than wide receivers and running backs. So from an athletic standpoint, like Williams, pops out in a great way. From a production standpoint, it might be enough concern for him to fall a little bit in the draft and be there when Atlanta's picking at 15 or possibly at 23 if they were to make that hypothetical trade with Green Bay. Before we get on out of here, I do want to show some love to a couple of super thanks that came in over the last week or so. If you don't know what a super thanks is, it's kind of like a super chat but during a video, which is like the YouTube version of a tip jar. But I think tipping has gotten obscene in this country to begin with. So I really appreciate everyone that super thanks to the channel and supports us. So TCG channel, it's not much, but hope you all get things back. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, this came after I shared on our video last Wednesday that unfortunately our Airbnb got robbed in Indianapolis. So that was a bummer for the beginning of the trip, but we pulled things together and put together a good rest of the trip. So TCG, thank you so much for your super chat and support. Same goes to Uncle Maine. Shout out to your resilience. Hope you all get a claim and recover it all. Yeah, my first time really dealing with insurance, so it's been a very fun process. Taylor Vaughn. This was pre-burglarization, not robbery. Tyler Algier, 5th-round pick to the Cowboys for 3rd pick, and Luke Schoonmaker plus Pitts and future 2nd rounder to the Jags for Jalen Walker. The Jags hang up and laugh. The Cowboys, this is probably too rich for them because they don't like having fun. They don't make deals hardly ever. If they do, it's a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo when Deebo Samuel goes for a 5th-round pick. So great job, Jerry. But I don't see Atlanta moving on from Algier. I think they really like the combination of Bijan and Algier, and they're going to ride out Algier for the rest of his rookie contract, let him go in free agency, and then get a comp pick that's going to be somewhat similar for which you could get in a trade, although you're not getting a 5th-rounder most likely. Maybe you could get a 5th for Algier. We got another super chat, or another super thanks from Taylor. Could we afford Eric Stokes or Tre'Davious White via free agency? Yes, those are 2 former first-round picks that are going to get very cheap deals. Eric Stokes, of course, you guys know him from Georgia. He had an up-and-down time in Green Bay, not expected to return to the frozen tundra. Tre'Davious White really had 50% of his superpowers taken away from him with all those injuries he sustained in Buffalo. Went to the Rams, traded to the Ravens. I don't expect him to return to Baltimore, and I could see a team, buying in on that former first-round hype. And then another super thanks from Taylor. Would it surprise you if the Falcons went all defensive in the draft? What's funny about this, Taylor, is you sent this in before the Combine, so kudos to you for being ahead of this one because after the news we got regarding only defensive coaches going to Indy and all their pre-draft visits going to defensive players, I don't think it would surprise me if every single draft pick this upcoming April was used on defense. So, Taylor, thank you so much for your super thanks, and to everyone who sent in super thanks as well. And we got one more as well from Sean. How about a restructure and trade of Cousins and Pitts to Cleveland with some extra picks for Garrett? Otherwise, any chance Atlanta does a trade with another organization to take Cousins' cap hit for picks like Houston did with Osweiler? Yeah, I know we aren't flush with picks, but some creativity could right this ship. Good thinking, Sean, on the Osweiler part there. I'll get to it in a moment. As for Garrett, the Browns are adamant they are not trading Miles. Now, things change in the NFL, but for now, I'm going to pause on trade for Myles Garrett because Cleveland went in front of the podium. and said, we have no interest in trading him. And they have all the leverage. Garrett has 2 years left on his deal, so he can sit out or he can play. As for trading Cousins and draft capital to get that contract off your books, which is what the Texans did with Brock Osweiler when they sent him to Cleveland, you don't trade players' contracts away and alleviate cap space. Like, when you look at a player's cap hit, when you trade that player away, that cap hit does not disappear. There is still a ginormous dead cap hit coming. So the only time it's advantageous to do this is if it's low guaranteed money, but big contract number, and you've already paid out all the guaranteed money, and there's very little left guaranteed, and there's very little dead money remaining. So that's not the case with Kirk, so I wouldn't compare it to the Brock Osweiler situation. Sean and everyone else, though, once again, thank you so much for your super thanks. I took these names and I tossed them into our wheel spin today. If you want to get on screen, send in a super thanks and we'll discuss whatever your idea, your question, or your take is. All right, let's spin the wheel, Mr. Barkus. Who is going to get 2 claps for this Monday edition of Falcons Today? It is TCG. TCG, thank you for once again sending some money our ways after fortunate events, but really appreciate, again, all the support you guys showed. It meant more than you might realize looking in the comment section and seeing all the very uplifting comments. So for everyone that supports the channel, thank you guys so much. And for TCG, 2 claps, 1, 2. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, although I think I'm going to be back in a few hours with another video because I missed you guys too much yesterday.